Welcome to the Kontent Rocks podcast, the show about all things Kontent.ai, .NET, and Azure for people who want to learn more about headless technology. And now, here's your host, Brian McKeiver.
Hey, all right. Welcome to the Kontent Rocks podcast. As the intro said, I am your host, Brian McKeiver. Thanks for joining me on this episode where we're going to cover my recap of Kontent.ai Horizons and what it was like to be a part of the conference, attend, speak, some takeaways, and just overall thoughts that I had from the conversations that were fantastic last week in New York City. So also want to give a quick little shout out to, I got a new room behind me. I think it's pretty cool. We've been working on it and improving the gear setup, the recording booth at the office. I want to thank my team for helping me out with that. I'm pretty excited. This is only like phase one of like 2 or 3 phases that I want to get into to make it more of a real kind of professional podcasting studio. But hey, we're getting there and it's a start. It's better than what it was before. So like I said, the episode today, you just have me. I don't have any guests. You're going to hear my thoughts about what it was like to be a part of the Horizons conference and you know, fantastic experience is how I would summarize that. So, yeah, I'm going to throw it up on the screen just in case so everyone could see it. So if you weren't aware, Kontent.ai had its annual conference last week in New York. And in fact, a couple of weeks ago, it was in London as well. So we've done 2 of those events, Kontent.ai has done 2 of those events. And the New York one was right in, downtown New York at the Glass House. Fantastic venue. It was great to go there, to travel there. In fact, the night before we got in, we got to see Times Square. And that was cool for my team because I went with my business partner, Mark, and Drew on the team as well. So frankly, we probably had too much fun, but we won't really get into that. But being at the event was special just because the venue was great. You had fantastic views, and it was just set up really well to have a nice sort of close, great place to have a conference, honestly. So, if we got into like what happened, I think it makes sense to like just kind of look at the agenda a little bit. Of course, the conference started with the keynote from Bart, who, if you don't know, he's the CEO of Kontent.ai. He kind of went over his kind of year perspective of where we're at and where we're going, and actually kind of more of the whole digital industry, if you will, and especially for Kontent.ai. But he talked about some bold predictions that he had for what's coming. And it's always refreshing to hear from the CEO, like the vision of where he wants that takes the company, where he sees the industry going, the idea of composability and composable AI. It kicked off the day with this theme that you saw run throughout the different sessions and different tracks that we went through. So it was great. He's always a fantastic speaker as well. So really appreciated him getting up there and kind of kicking the day off. And I enjoyed it. I really did. And it was cool to see, where he thought things were going. And from there, he kind of handed it over to Martin. Martin really kind of is the product guy. So when it got into the details of how Kontent.ai as a headless CMS differentiates itself from other headless CMSs in the market, I think Martin did a great job of kind of laying down the vision of how Kontent wants to really be in the space where there's lots of different branded sites, complex content operations, multiple languages, multiple regions, the need for just big sets of groups of data, whether it was for 100 different branded sites or more, one site with just a lot of different ways to divide and publish content and big teams, and how there's kind of a need in the market for that type of a solution when it comes to headless CMS, because just having one like content inventory screen or one bucket of content just isn't cutting it for a lot of enterprise organizations. And it's refreshing to see all that. And I don't want to like get into like every part of that because I think the recordings for these talks are coming out soon, and I don't want to steal anyone's thunder, especially like Bart and Martin. So I'm kind of covering it at a high level, to be honest, from what I recall and what I know about the product and the direction of where things are going. So Martin did a fantastic job. And then before the first break of the day, Colleen Jones kind of came on, and she's the founder of Content Science, and talked about how there really is a need for outstanding content leaders in a lot of organizations, and how there could be other roles. It's not just digital marketer anymore. There could be content strategists, content engineers, all sorts of different ways that there's needs for content And if you can actually go through a process that she kind of defined for maybe evaluating your content operations and understanding if we can optimize this content or write more content or create this more accurate content, the ROI can be shown from that. She went over some really good tips and tricks. I'm not going to pretend to say I know all of the things that she said because there was a lot. And frankly, she's the expert in that, not me. So it was an interesting way to think about how to basically get more out of your content operations. So I thought that was cool. And that's where we ended the morning session. After that, I had a quick break, got some coffee. I did a quick walk around the room to check out the venue, look through. So we were at the Glass House in New York, and just seeing the city skyline was very, very cool. I'll tell you more about that at the end. But after that break, we got back on, and it was up for me. It was my talk. So I had a quick couple 10, 15 minutes, and my whole idea was to talk about delivering on the promise of AI for content editors and how, frankly, I think it's been a lot of hype and a lot of myth. So what I did is to prepare for this is kind of do some research in the market, understand what do we say when we say AI for content editors, and what does that actually mean? And one of the examples that really called to me and actually just inspired me to write some code on the week before leading up to the conference is this idea of maybe having tools that really save content editors real amounts of time. Things like generating content based off a string of text or just typing in a few words as a bullet point and actually having that create entire blog posts and articles. There's a tool like Jasper out there that can do that. There's many other tools. So I started to do this research and I started to become aware that, wow, it's not just like writing text for me. There's this idea of creating images, creating video, all using AI tools. And that to me speaks to more like the promise of what AI is intended to do for us as marketers and content creators. So like I said, I was inspired. I actually wrote a custom element, and here it is. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger on the screen, make me a little smaller. This is fun. I really liked doing this. What I've got here is an element in Kontent.ai that I can just type a few words, and I typed New York City in this example, and clicked the generate button, and within a second or two, I had an image generated that looks like New York. That's pretty cool. In fact, I don't have to just generate one image. I could generate 5 or 10 images through what's called the OpenAI API, or if you're familiar with the term like DALL-E 2, there's basically a way to generate images from text. So just to kind of show the example, instead of New York City, what if I did like, I don't know, like podcast microphone? Spell it right, of course. I type in podcast microphone and I look at that and it says, oh, I'm going to take a second because I have some AI generation. There it is. There's a microphone that looks like it would work on the podcast. So instead of like hunting and pecking to find images on my computer or an asset library and like inside of Kontent.ai, I can just generate images. I think this could be super useful for teams that need to make like open graph images that represent their content, or maybe big hero area for blog post introductions or article introductions of like, a riverside or countryside to, just any kind of imagery that you would need to describe the content that you're creating. And I think that'd be fantastic if it was just part of the CMS. So that to me is saving people time. That is more of what the promise of AI was. And that's really what my talk was about, this whole idea. And it doesn't just stop here, because you can actually do this with video creation too. Like literally you can type in the same words, like I want to do a video around making microphones for a podcast, and a video could be generated of someone talking about it. Like that's pretty freaking impressive. And that's actually where I ended my talk on. And this is something that right now it's a proof of concept, and I'm going to work on it a little bit more this weekend, probably to maybe, release it. I'll probably open source it, or who knows, maybe work with the Kontent.ai team to actually make it something even more integrated. But so stay tuned for that. Watch my GitHub and my blog or my Twitter handle around that. I definitely want to release this to the community and let people know that, generating AI images could save some time and really be pretty cool. In case, if you do want to see more around my talk, I did give a blog post around putting out the slides, and there's that video. You can actually play the video and watch the person speak. That again, all AI based images and video generated there. And lastly, as I was going through my research, I did look at a lot of different tools and services. So I made a nice list of AI-based content writing tools, AI-based image editing, and AI-based video creation and editing software. And I thought that was a pretty cool just kind of list to put out there, and people at the conference really appreciated it too. So, but honestly, that's kind of enough about me. Let's go back to just the conference recap. After my talk, we listened to a translation provider. I actually didn't hear too much about this one. However, I've heard really good things about XTM. I know that's a new integration that Kontent.ai and XTM has released. So definitely recommend checking that out if you're looking for a translations provider. And then we got a cool session from Peter at Uniform. This is something I have actually talked about. I've actually demoed it in the Kontent Rocks podcast with Tim, their DevRel, principal DevRel person over there. So that's, in the old show episode list, you can go check out. Peter did a great job of explaining the idea of composability and orchestration around not having too much of your logic kind of built into the head. And actually, it really kind of goes hand in hand with another talk that Sana did at Kontent.ai. These two, Uniform and Kontent are somewhat similar in their approach and the idea of having an orchestration layer on top of any API first development you're doing. And really, it's this idea of not having the dependency on developers as much and opening up more flexibility for marketers to do their job without developers. And I think that's a fantastic approach. I know that there's more than one way to do that. Like, for instance, at Bitstream, we actually tend to kind of make our own middle orchestration API guide that helps organizations control the middle themselves. But these are two good options. Definitely would recommend checking them out. And then that actually leads me into my fellow Kontent.ai MVP presentation by Akshay Shura. Actually talked about this and how with their client, the American Bath Group, that they were able to pull off omni-channel, multi-channel experiences with Kontent.ai and how they did some of the things. So they're doing something similar where they're combining APIs together. And I thought that was super impressive as well. In fact, just the overall case study there that Akshay gave, pretty cool to see. So I'm glad that was part of the event. And then after that, Loris from Algolia, he got up on the stage, talked about how they went from having a static HTML-based site that they had one or two developers working on to grow and scale, and they now have a lot of marketing business users, and they wanted to reduce the content friction and increase efficiency of publishing content. They chose Kontent.ai for many reasons compared to other headless CMS, and he talked about why. Again, fantastic session. I really appreciate Loris giving this some insight on how they hooked up and basically went from needing like days to publish content to less than an hour. A fantastic way to see how that worked out and really transformed their content operations. So after that, that was like the meat of the conference. But my favorite part actually was the fact that the social networking event afterwards, we walked to an establishment not too far away. It was a little chilly that night, so luckily we got there pretty quickly. And I'm really happy that like basically everyone from the conference showed up. And there was a lot of value just in having a cocktail with them, sharing their stories, learning where they're at with their journey in headless or as vendors or even other agencies. I mean, I've talked to everyone there. I've talked to Bart, the CEO, talked to the DevRel team, the product team. We talked to the other partners and vendors. And it's just like, it's really a good tight-knit community and everyone's trying to help everyone else. And I encourage you to check out more of these events like this because there was a lot of value gained in that room that night. And just seeing everyone and I said, hey, have you thought about this? Or, hey, have you checked this out? Like it was just over and over people trying to help each other. And I thought that was really cool. So really, that's my main thing around these conferences. It's worth the time. Encourage people to get out and show up to them because you learn so much and you get inspired by what other people are doing. So, that's my take on Kontent.ai Horizons. Definitely we'll be back next year when they do it. Excited as always. Thank you to the Kontent.ai team for putting this together, especially Veronica for helping out with everything. And I think I'll end it there. We'll just keep this one a little short. So this has been the Kontent Rocks podcast. Thanks.